There we go.
So impatient. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining me this morning. This is being recorded, so if you don't like that, sorry. But we're gonna talk about DMR. One of the many digital protocols that we have in amateur radio. And so every once in a while we'll do this talk, and people seem to like it, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Start off just some of the goals of this roundtable, this tech talk. We're going to introduce some newbies to just the fundamentals of DMR. We're not going to get real technical, just kind of a high level looking down at it. Just a training session to of interest to the DMR enthusiast. I think we've got a lot of people in here who like DMR and use DMR, so this would be a good thing to do. Gonna do a little bit of equipment review and just show like where it started and where we've come. And then we're going to let advanced users, anybody who is familiar with DMR, we can do a Q&A once we're through this, ask some questions, and hopefully if you need help, get some help. I don't know if we can get to this today, but we're going to provide code plug assistance to members. Anybody who might need help with some code plugs. I believe we're going to be doing a tech talk on code plugs, so that will kind of fill that void also. And shameless plug here, DMR Texas. That's my website that I try to keep updated with all the repeaters and talk groups and everything. That's going to be a resource also in this roundtable. So some of the people kind of key that really have helped build DMR in Texas, all started with Jason. He kind of got into it. He started the Sunday Night Net and really ran with it. Promoted DMR heavily on his YouTube stream. And he is kind of not a whole lot lately, but he is a very big user of DMR also. Next to myself, run the DMR Texas website. We got Greg. Greg and Steve. They are owners of the W5 DMR repeater here in Hurst, the one that's up on the water tower. John, I don't want to leave you out. You climbed the tower and put the antennas up and things like that. So want to make sure to include you in that. A few more people. Todd, WB9 PHK. He is the Chicagoland Sea Bridge that our repeater, the Hurst repeater, goes through. We got N1 WP and 5LS. And then we've got just repeater owners, Sea Bridge owners, maintainers, financial people who have contributed financially to really build the network that we have. So a little history. This is kind of a more of a, I don't know if it's a personal opinion or if it's fact somewhere, but DMR seems to be the fastest growing standard in amateur radio. The reason is, we'll cover that in a minute. It started with 6 repeaters. Most of those, I believe, were up in the Chicagoland area. Had about 50 users in 2009. That was actually nationally when the FCC finally said, yes, you can use DMR on amateur radio. We had 2,800 users in 2013, so it kind of grew a little bit. In 2016, we had some new equipment come out, and that kind of exploded the growth. We took off to 60,000 users. And then as of just a couple of days ago, we've got almost 260,000 users or DMR IDs in the system. We're growing at about 400 new DMR IDs a week right now. There were times that it was a lot quicker and sometimes that it was slower. It kind of, when new equipment comes out, people get excited and we usually get more more people registering for IDs. So it's kind of a cycle there. In 2016-ish, the Titera MD380 came out, and that was kind of that catalyst in that we saw the explosive growth in 2017. It was a low cost radio, very reliable radio. I still have one, and I turned it on recently, and it was ready to go. I mean, no problem. And got one right over here also. So they're still great radios, and a lot of people use them. Later after that, we had Retevis, Redivis, Radioddity, and Alluance. They are newer players. They do release a lot of equipment. I would be willing to say I didn't put any tone on here, but they are a big player, and I would probably say that they're kind of leading the pack right now until one of the other manufacturers comes out with something. So some questions. Why DMR? Why not Fusion? Why not D-Star? Do we have room for multiple formats in amateur radio? I think so. We love radio, and that's what one of the things that makes amateur radio great is so because you can do just about anything that you want. How do you get started? DMR does have a barrier to entry. If you've never programmed a DMR radio, you're in for a treat. It is not as easy to program a DMR radio as it is, just a traditional FM radio, or even a fusion radio. So that is kind of a barrier to entry there. What are some of the functional issues associated with DMR? Some of the functional issues, the radios are literally just dumb boxes. They don't know anything from anything. You have to specifically tell the radio exactly what to do and how it's supposed to work. And we'll go over a little bit of that here in a few minutes. Some of the best operating practices. We've got a slide in here covering that. Just some best things to do. Just to keep things kind of working cleanly. So, what is the difference between DMR and, let's say, Fusion or even D-Star? So this top graph here, this is going to be like a Fusion repeater, D-Star repeater, or next gen repeater. Basically, what this is you're going to have the repeater whenever you transmit, it's transmitting constantly, nonstop. It is as long as you're holding down the transmit button, it's going to be transmitting. Same thing. You got repeater 2. If you want to be able to operate, 2 repeaters on the same frequency at the same time, you have to have some sort of combining equipment, which can be expensive. The benefit to DMR, which is a TDMA or time based on time, is you can have one repeater. It will break up its transmissions into pulses. So you can have, in this case, you can have 2 conversations going on at the same exact time on the same repeater and never hear anything, hear the other person talking. It's each pulse is broken down into a 30 millisecond chunk. And so the radio will transmit and it will stop and another radio could transmit. So it's a sharing of that same frequency in different time space there, if that makes any sense. So basically what you get, lower cost. You can have one repeater in a box and basically get 2 voice channels from one repeater compared to the FDMA system, which is, like I said, Fusion or D-Star. TDMA saves licensing and equipment costs by enabling the equivalent of 2 6.25 kilohertz channels within a single licensed 12.5 kilohertz channel. So Basically, translation of that is recently the FCC said to everybody, businesses and everybody, except us in the amateur radio, we need a standard where we can do narrow band FM transmissions that we are accustomed to in amateur radio are 25 kilohertz and bandwidth spectrum. The digital is 12 and a half, so it's half. You can get more frequencies in use in a given frequency because it's a smaller footprint as far as frequency space. So each one of these digital systems has its benefit, and the way that DMR works is it transmits 12 and a half kilohertz every 30 milliseconds, and then it will allow another radio to fill that spot while it's not transmitting. And so it's a kind of a, yeah, it's very, very spectrally efficient. And as I said, TDMA transmissions are broken into two separate time periods. We call them time slots, and programming software will refer to them as time slots. Time slot 1, time slot 2. And so when something is transmitting, it's transmitting on slot 1, slot 2, slot 1, slot 2 is how that repeater is functioning. And so you're having multiple conversations at the same exact time and never hearing the other, a conversation going on. So it's a pretty clever system that was developed. So looking at this is the on the left, the traditional analog. That's the 25 kilohertz bandwidth. So you got your frequency center, and the actual bandwidth there goes out from frequency center, goes out to 12 and a half kilohertz in each direction. That gives you a 25 kilohertz bandwidth there. One channel, one repeater. DMR is 12 and a half. So you can see there it's actually half of the traditional full bandwidth that we're normally use. This is one way that you get the multiple channels off of one repeater. So not only is it narrow band, but it's also time separated there. And if there's any questions, y'all can just stop me and ask. So it is more spectrum efficient than old digitals. So looking at this, what this is going to be your guard band. In some digital and also in FM, you have to have some sort of space in between two frequencies. And so what this is showing, in order, we'll just say that this one's FM. In order to keep that bleed over from happening, you got to have some sort of guard band in there. You got to have some sort of separation in order to keep those two frequencies from interrupting each other. DMR doesn't have that. You can actually put DMR right next to another frequency and and not experience any kind of issues whatsoever. So you can see it's a very well thought out system that was developed back in the 2000s. The technology is pretty revolutionary compared to what we'd have always had as far as AM or FM and things like that. You do get a little bit better signal quality. It's hard to see there, but the white the black line right there is going to be your analog. So as you continue to get further and further away and your signal gets weaker and weaker, basically that's what we traditionally hear as crackle or static. In DMR, you don't hear that. Basically, you hear the digital channel all the way up until basically the radio just can't receive it. So looking at this will kind of give you a curve there showing the signal quality as far as once the signal gets weaker. In between the blue and the black line there, the vertical spacing is going to be your audio quality. So your audio quality is going to be very good. And then as you get further away, you can see it kind of starts to gradually slope until eventually it falls off and you're not able to hear anything. You get the same kind of response out of FM whenever you just lose your signal. That bottom line there is going to be your minimum acceptable audio quality. So digital, regardless if it's this is more of just a digital in general. This isn't DMR specific. This is just digital in general. You don't experience hiss, no popping, no static. Better RF range. You do get a little bit better RF range, though it does have its limitations. DMR has a range limitation of about 100 miles. Once you start getting past that, you start losing packets of data, and so about 100 miles is going to be your range limit for that. Where FM, you can get a little bit more. The flamethrower that's up on the Dallas Green building, I've actually heard it all the way up in Ardmore, Oklahoma. So, and I was not able to hear the DMR repeater out there. So, and it all depends on, where you are and things like that. Digital has forward error correction and also CRC checks just to ensure the quality of the signal, and also make sure whatever the payload it's supposed to deliver is actually delivered. So if a packet is lost, the radios can actually resend it, and the receiver can reassemble it, and you don't lose that quality. You do get a little bit better audio quality with DMR. I think I already said that. If you listen for yourself, DMR does sound better than older digital technologies like D-Star. I'm not harping on D-Star. It's an older technology. It's very well established, but it uses older digital technology, and you can really hear it when you start getting some packet loss and things like that. The vocoder on DMR does a really, really good job of kind of overcoming that. It does sound noticeably better than D-Star, and it sounds equivalent to Fusion because Fusion and DMR use a more modern, and they use the same codecs, which is the coder encoder, or coder decoder, which is how it converts your voice from analog to digital there.
What are D-Star and Fusion? Are those the proprietary to ICOM and Yaesu?
So Fusion is they say that it's open standard, but they're the only Yaesu is the only one that has a Fusion radio, and then D-Star is ICOM's version. D-Star is really neat. This is a DMR tech talk, so I'm gonna stay on scope. But D-Star is pretty neat. It's just older equipment. I mean, older software, basically.
Is Fusion C4 FM, or is that something different?
It is.
Okay.
And DMR is also C4 FM.
Say it again.
Both Fusion and DMR are both C4 FM.
Oh.
It's just how it's transmitted. Is it time, or is it based on frequency?
Okay.
DMR.
Sorry, is the voice compression happening in the codecs or somewhere down the?
Yes. Yes.
That's
so
how we get so much signal and such.
Mhm. Yes. So DMR sounds exactly like Fusion. If you have a DMR radio and a Fusion radio set to I think it's DY or DW, basically full bandwidth mode, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So they do sound the same. They use the same vocoder. The vocoder is the physical processor that handles the codec. Both DMR and Fusion use the AMB2 Plus, which is not an open source codec. So somebody does own that. So you have to keep that in mind if you ever want to get into building DMR, you have to understand that you got to license the vocoder. Though you can't just say, hey, I'm going to take this one and put it in this radio, because you'll have a mismatch there and you won't be able to talk. You have to have the same vocoder, or something that is a little newer that has the backwards compatibility. You do get a little bit better battery life, and the reason is because, like, if I take this radio that's in my hand, this is just a regular old FM radio. If it had, say, Fusion, when you transmit, it's transmitting nonstop until you let off. So that day, it's just nonstop transmitting. DMR, because it transmits in burst and packets in the same given period, you're actually going to transmit about half of the amount of time. So you will get a little bit better battery life. Roughly, they say about 40% improvement. That's pretty close. I've seen that as far as some Fusion radios, earlier Fusion radios, to be honest, and comparing that with the DMR radio. DMR typically does get a little bit better life just because it's transmitting half the time. So some of the fundamentals, due to the time slots, there are two independent channels. So you can have a conversation on, let's say, North Texas wide and Texas state wide at the same time, as long as they're not on the same time slot. If one is on one and one is on another, then you can have that conversation and never hear the two. Each repeater will be set up under a color code. The color code is the DMR digital version of a PL tone on an analog radio, or CTCSS tone on an analog repeater. Does the same thing. You have to have that color code, and it is a requirement in order to activate the transmitter. Selective calling to a particular community of users is called a talk group. The best way I can kind of describe this is, think of like a chat room, I guess you could say. You can get multiple people on a talk group and be able to talk, amongst each other. It says that this is analogous to running PL on an analog repeater. No, it's a little bit different. I need to change that there. But think of it as kind of as a chat room. You can be in one chat room and somebody else in another, and have conversations and not hear anybody. Multiple talk groups are available on each time slot. So, as an example, on our Hurst repeater here, we have roughly about 30 talk groups, ranging anywhere from different states to Texas statewide to different regional, international, like worldwide or North America. You can have multiple groups on a time slot. You can only use one talk group at a time, though. So one talk group can be active at a time in a time slot. With 2 time slots, you get 2 talk groups, and that's going to be max on the repeater at any given time, because 2 time slots, so you can have two talk groups at any time.
Okay, so you don't hear the second talk group that you're not associated with, right?
Correct.
But the radio knows that the time slot's in use right now,
Yes.
and so you can't try to transmit, or what happens there?
So if somebody's having a conversation and you're on a time slot, at same slot as a person having a conversation, what happens is depending on your radio, the radio should bonk you. It should give you an error.
Okay.
If you're on a different time slot,
Right.
as than somebody else, then the repeater will just respond to you.
Gotcha.
And you just,
So the radio says you can't use this time slot right now.
it's supposed to, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that all depends on how your radio is set up. If it's set up to color code, or talk group busy, it will bonk you. You cannot get in, and so that's something we'll talk about here in just a minute. Also, in one of the screens. Increases capacity. Like I said, talk time slot 1, talk group 3. That's going to be talk group 3 is worldwide English. That one will activate all repeaters in the US that have USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK, basically worldwide. Any repeater in the world that has a worldwide talk group on it, then it will activate. Slot 1 and slot 2, talk group 9. That's typically the local repeater, which then the repeater will act as a normal FM repeater. There's no traffic going out. It's all local. Time slot 2, first 4 digits of a state. Like this one shows Kansas 3120, Texas is 3148. And then also we can get into country codes like Canada's 302. United States is 31, I think 31. This used to kind of be the standard. You had locals on slot 1, national, international on slot 2. That really doesn't matter anymore. It's up to the repeater owner what they want to do. If they want to put everything, exactly the opposite, they're more than welcome and can do that, no problem. A lot of clubs have their own talk groups. The Hurst Club does, HurstARC, which is 48778. When we were developing that one, we were looking at the numbers going on the phone, and it was like, oh, HU. So we just 48778, and that one is passed along to just a couple of repeaters. I think 5? We got 3, and then some up in Chicago. It is wonderful. Wonderful. See, these are some of the common talk groups. Now these numbers don't change. So your North America is 3, and it has been 3 for almost 15 years. TAC 310, TAC 311, 312, 3100, those numbers, that is what they are. They don't change. Do I? Yes. So those are your actual talk group numbers. And then we will associate the actual, like, worldwide. We associate that in the radio to a contact, so the radio can do its thing, and then we can look at it and say, oh, well, that's worldwide, okay, or North America, or Cactus, or fill in the blank. All of these talk groups and repeaters and everything, they're all connected by here in Texas. Now, this is a Texas specific presentation. Almost all of the repeaters in Texas, except for some along and down in Houston area, are connected to a C bridge. C bridge, just think of that as a router, like on a network. That's basically what it does. A packet comes in, says, hey, I'm supposed to go here, and it sends it to wherever it goes. That's the easiest way I can kind of describe a C bridge. It's the DMR router. So much of the power of DMR is because of the links between. It's one big network that has been created. A lot of the old timers, not looking at anybody in here, a lot of the old timers say that it's cheating. Why would I get on HF if I can get on worldwide? Because it's fun. So what? Who cares? The router that's used to connect the repeaters is called the C bridge. There's also Brandmeister. Brandmeister is an open source. They say open source. project to replace the C Bridge, because the C Bridge is a licensed device. And so if you buy a C Bridge, you buy a certain number of license, 7 or 12 or 50 in the name of, yeah, and those licenses are not cheap. And so Brandmeister was created a few years ago, and to do kind of the same thing. I don't think that it's as efficient, but that's personal opinion. And
What are you need multiple licenses for?
a C Bridge,
No, I know. What does the 50 licenses do?
that gives you like 50 repeater connections.
Like a seat, if
Mhm.
you're doing software version.
Yeah,
A seat.
it's like a license, software license.
It basically sets the number of slots that one repeater can have active at a time.
So if you buy five C Bridge licenses, you can have 5 master repeaters connect to that C Bridge. If you go above that, it's gonna want you to buy another license all the way up to however many that you need. And so the Chicagoland C Bridge has got just a ton of repeaters connected to it, because he's got a bunch of licenses for it. So C Bridges, Brandmeister, DMR Plus. DMR Plus is also a C Bridge network. I believe I may be wrong on that. They're different methods of switching between repeaters. Like I said, it's just a router, and it's used to direct your voice packets to the right place. They do essentially the same thing. They're just, different software. Most users, and I still believe this even after all these years, in my humble opinion, most users will be happier if they start and they go with a disciplined environment like a C Bridge, where the owner of the repeater and the C Bridge owner have collaborated basically to make the best experience available. Brandmeister is power to the people. It gives the control to the end user, but at a cost of audio quality or network quality or something. They're just different networks, and I've gone to other states and listened to a Brandmeister network, and there is an audio quality difference just because it's a different system. You have like Motorola equipment going into an open system rather than, proprietary Motorola going into a Motorola, another Motorola repeater. So there are benefits to both. I prefer a C Bridge compared to Brandmeister, but that's, an argument for another day. This is called IP Site Connect. The linking of them. So right there in the center, that's the bridging hardware. This is going to connect to a master repeater. And earlier I said master specifically because you can have a master and a peer. So if you look at how, let's just take the first master repeater on the side there. It's got the gray top group and it's got the purple top group. Any repeater that's connected to that master, any peer that's connected to that master, can have any assortment of gray and purple. Is the best way to explain that. It can't have something else because it's not available. You're peering through that master repeater, which is connected to the C Bridge there. So if you look at the one on here on the left, gray and purple go in. The peer on the right only has purple. The other ones have the same thing as the master there. So this is how it's all linked together. This is a very basic concept of how a DMR network works. You have that C Bridge in the center. You have the masters, and here in Texas we do have master and peer, especially in the early days when C Bridge licenses were very expensive. There were a couple that I know of that, let's see, who was it? Lone Star connected in, and then we had I think it was down in Waco or some in that area. That repeater was connected to the that repeater was connected to a master in order to not take up a license. So the license for the C bridge is only direct connected repeaters. So you can peer others as a slave, basically, through a master. So it's a pretty neat network, how things work. So how does it work in real life? The W5EBQ repeater, that's that used to be the big boy in downtown Dallas. That was the one that covered all this area. It was up on the green. It is up on the green building. There's actually 2 repeaters up there. And the reason was just because I believe that, what is EBQ's name? Shame on me, I forgot it. Anyways, he didn't want to have to deal with what we call push to talk. The way a repeater can have 30 time slots on it is because most of them are what we call push to talk. They stay quiet unless you want to activate it, and then you will do a chunk, and that will activate that time slot. He didn't want to have to deal with that. So what he did was he has 2 repeaters up there on the green building. One of them handles DFW Metro and Texas statewide, and then the other one is North America and worldwide, and I think a regional. I haven't looked lately to see what's up there, but that's kind of how it works there.
James Hopper.
James, yes, yeah, and I believe he is also the owner of the Lone Star Sea Bridge. Why am I seeing?
So I'm a little confused about the push to talk. So,
Okay.
so if I key up and I'm trying to get North America or something, what does that mean, that now the repeater is like subscribed to North America for the next 15 minutes for everyone?
Exactly.
For everyone.
For that repeater, only that repeater. So we can actually bring up the North America. I think North America may be push to talk, or the bridge. Bridge is one that I like to listen to every once in a while. So I'll get my radio and I will literally chunk the repeater on the repeater, and that will activate it. And now for 10, 15 minutes, I can hear everything. And now if I start interacting with it and talking to somebody, it will stay up until there's 10 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes of no interaction there, and then it'll go quiet again.
But that means it's also unavailable for someone else to push to talk on.
Yes,
Different.
but well, think of each repeater as its own little island. So whatever we do on the Hurst repeater doesn't affect others. So if you had to do the same thing on, say, the Grapevine, then what you're doing on that one is only on that one. So it's repeater specific on to what you do. But it's just a time, it's like a timer. You activate it, and then in 15 minutes it'll go quiet. And that way we don't have 30 talk groups all talking at the same time through one repeater. That makes sense?
But does it lock the time slot completely from other talk groups, or can other talk groups still get in?
Other talk groups can still get in, but
as long as it's not in use.
Correct. You'll have to fight others for the use of it. We used to have another talk group that would sometimes get activated. Minnesota would get activated at the time of the Texas statewide net, and so because that was active and you could hear people on it, that was wiping out the Texas statewide net, because one that talk group was active at the time that
It was priority on that trip.
Yeah.
Chris mentioned, instead of on the sea bridge, but only Texas statewide, active during the statewide net Wednesday night, same for the HurstARC on Sunday night.
good. So what they just said was a priority has now been set on Texas statewide to where that is the only talk group on that time slot that you can use during the net time. That's a C bridge setting that can be um, asked to have activated on the C bridge itself. So the W5 DMR, that used to be a backyard repeater in Colleyville on top of Steve's old house. We had a few talk groups, Texas statewide, but it was primarily so you could talk back to Chicago, essentially. Yeah. And then eventually we got it put up on the water tower, and in this area, I would say it's kind of the big boy in town right now, with the exception of Dallas. Dallas is up 1,000 feet up, so you really can't, fight with it. It's the footprint on that's huge. So many variations on this setup exist. Greater flexibility outside of the Sea Bridge environment. But if you go outside, like this one just says, Brandmeister, you get greater flexibility as an end user. You can activate talk groups, any Brandmeister talk group, under like a push to talk, but with that becomes more confusion. Like there is a Brandmeister 3148 as well as a Seabridge 3148. Both of those are Texas statewide. They're not connected. And so if you're on Brandmeister and you want to talk on statewide, the statewide net, you can't do it because they're not connected. So let's cover some of the radios. In the beginning, we had the XBR 650 or 6550 and the 7550E. The one on the right is the 3500, and then the one on the left is the more complex 7550E. Those were the go-tos. That was, if you wanted DMR, that's what you went with. Then the XBR 4550 came out, and a little bit newer version than that was out. Both of those are extremely expensive. About 2015, Tytera came out with this low-cost radio that was $120, and it worked like a champ, and it kind of became the standard. I mean, if you wanted to get in DMR and you didn't want to spend, buy Motorola equipment at Motorola prices, you went with the Tytera because it was the one that went out there. For a long time, Motorola had for a few years, they had the monopoly, and they charge astronomical prices, and they still charge astronomical prices, but because DMR is an open standard, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of manufacturers out there that you can get different, radios at different cost points. On the repeater side, this is on a C bridge side, we have an artificial limitations that restrict the C bridge network to Motorola repeaters only. Period. If you want a C bridge, Motorola equipment. That's kind of what the rules are. And that's kind of enforced by C bridge owners just because that's part of that network integrity, the sound, the audio quality sounds good. So if you want to hook in a Chinese Tytera repeater to the network, not only you might have some issues because you're putting Tytera equipment on a Motorola network, so you may have some little oddities there. It can do it, but the C bridge owners as a collective have said, no, we're going to do Motorola equipment only. If you're going to buy a radio, you want to make sure that you get a radio that is UHF 1, not UHF 2, which is 450 to 512 megahertz. That's the commercial band. If you accidentally buy a UHF 2 radio, you will not be able to get on the amateur bands because 450 to 512 are those frequencies. So one thing you got to keep in mind is DMR is a business standard. It was designed specifically for businesses. One of the ways that we've come up with to be able to play on DMR even though it is a business standard, we've come up with this system of radio IDs. DMR will support 16.7 million IDs. We're at 260,000 right now, so we got plenty to spare, but that's the limitation of it. Anybody, any amateur radio operator can register. You can get an ID for free. radioid.net/register. This is not a hard limit, but it's requested that you request a maximum of 2 IDs per person. I have 2. I use one for mobile and one for HTs. But you can put the same ID in multiple radios. This ID system is just how, let's say you're a police dispatcher using DMR. That's your radio ID is how they can say, oh, police car 1, we show that you're transmitting. Is everything okay? That's how a DMR ID or a DMR radio system will ID what radio is what. Unlike D-Star and Fusion, you have to register your call sign to be issued a DMR ID number. You don't have to do that on D-Star and Fusion. The very first thing that happens when you power those radios is it asks you for your call sign. Those were designed specifically for amateur radio. DMR is a business system that we've taken to be our own. And remember, DMR is a business standard first. That is period. It acts like a business system. We've adopted as amateurs for amateur use. That's where we get the DMR IDs, the top groups and everything. We've molded it to our use, but when you break it down, it is a business standard first and foremost. So programming a radio, these are not very big screenshots. Programming a radio is the biggest bottleneck to DMR. It's not an easy process. I sat down with my buddy Lee the other night. He bought a new radio and I worked with him for an hour to get him a functional code plug and teaching him how to use it. And he's like, this is ridiculous. You're not kidding. It's a business standard. It's designed for professionals to program the radio for professional needs. Oftentimes when it comes to DMR in the business, company needs radios. They go to a vendor. The vendor says, here's what we have. Okay, what are your settings? What do you need? And the company will set it up and then deliver those radios never to be programmed again. So that's a big bottleneck. Once you've done it about 85 times, it gets easier. But it's a very time consuming process for sure.
YouTube's your friend.
Yeah. Yes. C bridges have an interface that you can look at. So if you're talking on a radio and you want to see what's, if you're making it into the repeater, you can go to whatever C bridge that you're on. You can actually go to that. So this is a picture of the Chicagoland as some people were talking. And you can see what's on there. It'll give you, who you're talking to, your source, what you're talking on, the site name that you're on. If you have loss, gives you all that information in real time as you use it. And if you want to find these on the DMR Texas webpage under repeaters, there is a call sign or a call watch link that will take you, and all the ones that we use here in Texas are listed in there. This is another screenshot. This one is the first one that I showed you. I actually filtered out all the Brandmeister stuff just so you could see the C bridge linking. This one is just everything. I just screenshotted it there. It's very difficult to see, but it gives the same information. And up at the very top, you've got it, accepted text and rejected. So if there's something, if you're on the HurstARC group and you want to know if you're making it in there, you can actually filter out and only see our talk group. That's one of the things, and that way you can see if you're making it in there or what's going on.
That page is
One
DMR Texas.
Yes, so go to repeaters. And then, right under call watch and peer watch, yeah.
Now, I have found that those search boxes are case sensitive. So if you don't have the right casing in the call sign, all uppercase, it won't show
Yes.
up in the list.
Yes, they absolutely are case sensitive for sure. All right. So considerations. All radios must have a valid DMR ID. Your radio will transmit without one. It'll be like 0000001. And if you do that, I promise you people will call you out. They'll be like, hey, where's your ID? And you go get one, plug it in there, and you're good to go. Please don't key up on statewide and blow into the mic to test your radio. That is something that used to happen all the time. It's kind of limited now. You're going to trigger 30, 40 repeaters across the state here, and you go,
About a whistle.
a whistle, same thing. Just say, radio check. That's true. That's true. Yeah. Doing that will not only irritate all the people listening, it'll also make the FCC unhappy. If they happen to be listening. According to the rules, it's not an illegal transmission. That's, the rules, subsection 97119A. I had to look that one up. If you can do radio test on talk group 9 or whatever the talk group is for the repeater you're on. And I'd put shameless plug for DMR Texas so you can look up the local repeater information for whatever repeater you want. I don't make any money off of that website, so I don't know if it's shameless or not, but it's there for everybody to use. When you're using DMR, you must identify with your call sign, just like you do on analog. It's just exactly the same thing. That's every 10 minutes max during your conversation, and then at the end when you're closing out. So your radio ID, your digital number that you get does not suffice for radio ID for a call sign. You have to give your call sign vocally. Use the smallest talk group footprint needed to connect to operators. So if you're talking to somebody in Fort Worth, there's probably not a reason why you would need to talk on statewide. You could probably talk on, North Texas wide or whatever the smallest footprint group, but that's common between the two repeaters. It originally was, yeah, and those kind of turned into a call channel, and people kind of got hostile for a while, and it was like, I'll just chill out. It's just a talk group. So if you can use whatever the smallest group is, if that's a metro or something else local, use that instead of even on, don't use North America for something that you're talking to somebody that's, right down the street. Because I promise you, there will be people on there who will yell at you. Yes. Yeah. And we've got the HurstARC group, which activates those few designated repeaters. If you want to just talk to somebody directly, like without keying up any of the other repeaters, you can talk on local 9. And that works just like a traditional FM repeater. The Seabridge links master repeaters, groups of 15 to 20 up to 50. And then links also to other Seabridges. Like I said, it's just a router. It's basically all it is. It's made by Rayfield Communications. It used to be an actual appliance. The the Lone Star Seabridge used to be an appliance, and it ran for 12 years, and it finally gave up the ghost, and now it's a virtual machine in a data center. Still have the same licensing cost. You just don't have the appliance that you have to buy. You can actually get the software and install it. We have dozens of masters. We have Chicago. We have Southern New Hampshire, Southern Florida, Montreal, Toronto, Brisbane, DMR Mark is a C bridge. DMR Plus is a C bridge. And they're all interlinked together. And like I said, it's just that their sole purpose in life is just to route talk groups from one to the next. A talk group will have a master repeater or its authoritative repeater. So Texas statewide is, I believe, is now authority. Is the Texmark, or the Southern Gulf Sea Bridge is now the authority for Texas statewide. When we started having problems with the Dallas, when they gave up the ghost, they moved the actual authority. So you can't have two sea bridges that are authority for a talk group. It's one, and then everything connects to that one as the source. Hotspots, you can get hotspots, just little things, little transmitters that you can talk into. You cannot connect those to the C bridge, but you can connect them to Brandmeister, and you can talk hotspot to hotspot, or a lot of different experimental type of connections. You can do that. The Texas statewide DMR net. This is a net that's been going on for roughly about 10 years now, 12 years, 2012. Held every Wednesday night at 7:30 on Talk Group 3148. That is 3148 Texas statewide on a C Bridge network. It is not on Brandmeister, because we like to keep it, real confusing. Brandmeister. Not available on Brandmeister. All the repeaters that host the Texas statewide DMR net are connected to a C bridge. Any number of the C bridges through the state that are, all linked together. Each week we have a different net control. Steve is a net control. Romy's a net control. I used to be a net control, but I stepped back from that a couple of years ago. Michael's in net control. Yep. So it's a good place to exchange ideas, questions, get help, meet people, talk about new equipment. And it's a good time. I mean, it really is. Like I said, it's been going for 12 years, I believe it is. I want to give some acknowledgments. Rayfield Communications, they're the C Bridge people. Titera, Motorola, DMR Texas. This is just a very small list. A lot of people have put a lot of time, energy, and money into building the network here in the state. And if I had their whole list, I would, I'd put on there, be 2 or 3 slides long. But so yeah, DMR is a lot of fun. It is. I've been doing it almost 8 years. And so it's a lot of fun. But I want to thank y'all for sitting through this, and hopefully maybe you learned something, and we can do a Q&A if anybody has any questions. So anybody have any questions? I know we've got a group here. I can't get down there to.
Where's your mouse?
I'm in presentation mode. Wait, there you go.
If there's anything connected to a repeater,
Correct. You can connect from a C bridge. I didn't say this earlier. You can connect to a C bridge from Brandmeister and vice versa. They will talk to each other. Certain talk groups are not connected, like Texas statewide is one. That's one that is not connected. But we used to have a link. It was a Texas statewide on Brandmeister. It was connected to like 9,000 or something like that. We even had a connection to what do they call it? Texas statewide, Texas Nexus. We used to have a link between Fusion's Texas Nexus and Texas Nexus on on the Sea Bridge. There was somebody set up that link and it worked. It worked great. So you can connect those two together. You just have to.
Basically, the guys just sat down and reverse engineered Motorola's protocol. That became Brandmeister, and then Brandmeister's had 3 or 4 different splits, so. And as Chris said, the challenge is that they only reverse engineered as far as they needed to. They didn't do everything. And
Now-
so if you're not Motorola,
Yeah, you have to keep in mind the IPsec is a Motorola technology. That connection from one repeater to the next, that is a Motorola proprietary software. Voice, the actual, now you can take like a Titera, say a Titera repeater, it would be able to connect to a C bridge, but because it's been reverse engineered, there's gonna be something lacking in there, because if you start fiddling with things, you don't want Motorola coming after you with the cease and desist. So they have to be very careful of what it is that they reverse engineer in order to, because I think it's a patent. It actually, yeah, so you don't want to have the big boys come after you because they have deeper pockets.
Proprietary part of the IPsec thing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. Yep.
That's, but the simplest Motorola, radio, what are we talking about for cost? Just an intro.
What would that one that you had that was just a radio?
not that expensive, 5 years, I think.
45,
50.
45, 50, $300.
You can get, if you want an HT, the what's that one that you had that had no buttons or anything, just the knobs?
$5 on eBay, it's XPR 6100,
Mhm.
7550, you can get for 300.
Which is-
The mobile is worth it, in my opinion, the copy is not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's-
sure.
If any of you guys have a sea bridge for a talk group you'd like to get on, in Florida or Europe or whatever else, just send me an email, I'll have it added to the repeater to Chicago on sea bridge. I mean, any talk group you need with a recent Nick, we can just put on, that's, Chicago.
Keith, do I understand correctly that the Hurst repeater will not access Brandmeister talk groups, only Seabridge? That is incorrect. So the Seabridge can interact with Brandmeister.
Miller himself, I believe we're set up on Grandma.
Yes. So we used to have Texas Nexus, which was a Brandmeister talk group. We used to have that active on the Hurst machine. So there is the ability to link those there, but it's a deliberate, like if there's something on Brandmeister that you want, you can ask, I'm not going to say go to Miller directly, but you can come to me, you can come to Steve W5HK and say, hey, there's this talk group on Brandmeister we'd like to connect. And the Seabridge owner can work his magic in the background and get those linked together.
He done some- yeah, forget about
Some, yeah, that's a political thing. So, but yes, you can access Brandmeister talk groups on Seabridge. They just have to be set up first.
But in its current state, the Hearst is not tied into anything brand new.
Go with that.
You know,
Yeah. Anything else? Chris?
I don't know if we have any Brandmeister ones linked right now. I'd have to look and see. I don't think we do. I think when Texas Nexus went down, all of our connection or any connections we had went down for just because the talk group died. But we can, if there's something that you like or something that you want, most of them can be connected in somehow. Anybody else?
So,
Okay. Romy and his wife donated this Allianz HT have charging cable, or programming cable, radio, everything for free for someone who does not have a DMR radio. Is there, yeah, I think 2 people now in here who do not have DMR radio.
So yeah, that Eluance HD1, I have that radio and I've used it for years.
I've got.
I've carried it for so many years. My first one I bought with the Amazon warranty, and the battery died, and they were like, "Send us the radio and the radio, or the radio and the battery both." And I'm like, "It's just a battery. Send them both. We're gonna send you a new radio."
See you next time.
So that is a fantastic radio. It's built like a tank. I've dropped mine on concrete so many times, and it chugs along.
Me and his wife are donating this. I understand it's around $200.
It is $200 radio. Yep.
For free, so. I think we have two candidates who do not have
No,
DMR radio.
I have one.
yeah.
I'd like it, yeah.
Travis, you got a
Yeah.
radio?
You have a brand new DMR.
I will. I have a. Oh, nice. I have a code plug that I can send you.
Okay, I have a code plug for it.
Okay.
Are you on DMR?
Thank you.
Yeah, you nailed the hour. That was good.
I had another question. So the DMR
Yeah, I dabble.
has a network interface built in. You just plug it in the internet, program it to point toward a C bridge.
Mhm.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's IP based, so you put in you don't put in
I
a
get
host
that.
name,
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
put in the
I
IP
get
and
all
it.
that. Okay, I was just making sure that I understood the link from the RF radio itself to the internet. It's built into the radio.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
And then so the C bridge is just a software package running on a virtual machine.
Yes,
And so all this network traffic's being pointed to it, and it's just routing. Saying you
Correct.
go back out and you go to that.
Yep,
That
exactly.
device over there. Okay. And so that's the connection for the master. What about the peer? What's the connection of the peer to the master?
here you would just put the IP of the master.
Okay, so it's also,
Yes,
an-
so what is available on the master can be available
gotcha.
on the
So
peer.
the master
or
gets
the- yeah.
the internet traffic and forwards it.
Correct.
basically, yeah.
And so anything that is not on the master will not be on the slave or the peer at the same time. It can only have what the master has. Nothing else.
Okay.
In situations like this, I'm not even familiar with the answer to the slave repeater.
It used to be common, back in the early days when there were hardly any sea bridges. There was a couple, and down in Central Texas, there was a couple that were peered off of, I think Lone Star, or the main, the big one in Dallas. I don't know if they still are, because we got sea bridges galore now. You just find one and ask for permission to hook to it. Yeah.
I had a question. Rebecca, are you on the HurstARC with my new DMR radio?
Well, that's actually one of my questions, because I've never heard any activity on Talk Group 9 or the Hearst Talk Group. So I haven't spent a lot of time with it active, but I just wanted to have a like eyeball check here of, I created this myself after watching YouTube. So I know that statewide works.
So go ahead and open up the HurstARC one there. Take a look and see.
I can get on frequency from here if we want to test.
Other one.
Spot one, okay. All of that looks good. If you would, go to